asked me tonight to speak about Elijah, and if you guys have heard about Elijah, it's found in 1 Kings chapter 16, and Elijah was just this really cool dude. It talks about him. It first says that he's a Tishbite. If you don't know what that is, neither do I. I don't think anybody knows what it is. But Elijah one day saw across the land, and he saw that everybody was kind of acting unrighteously, it says. King Ahab had been made king of Israel. He had married this woman named Jezebel. Hopefully you've never been called a Jezebel. But Ahab and Jezebel were the king and the queen of Israel. They were ruling over it. And Elijah, this man of God, is one day called by God to walk up to King Ahab. He walks up to King Ahab and he says, hey, there's going to be a drought. That's all he really says that he said, and then he walked away. I don't think Elijah believed him very much. But then it says Elijah went off on his own, and then a drought came across Israel, and it was a terrible drought. And it caused Ahab to constantly be searching for this guy Elijah. Where's that guy that told me that there was going to be a drought? Where did he go? Where can I find him? I have to kill him. Then one day Elijah, who was out, who was alone, is called by God to go to King Ahab and set up a challenge with him. And he sets up this challenge where he asks King Ahab to get all of the false prophets to walk to the top of this mountain, and they're going to have a competition to see who can sacrifice a bull. And we read about this story, and I think a lot of times we imagine here's Elijah over here with his little offering, and then here's this big crowd on this side. See, I'm jumping again. Here's this big crowd on this side of all these crazy Baal worshipers that are sitting around it, but we don't think of it as too many people. If you look, I hope none of you have your Bibles. I don't think I've ever said that. But in chapter 18, verse 20, we find out that that's not necessarily true. King Ahab didn't just call the 450 prophets of Baal up on the mountain. He called all of Israel. So when you're imagining this scene, I don't want you to imagine Elijah and then a group of people right there. I want you to imagine this mountain. And Elijah's on one side of the mountain. He has his bull on the other side. On the other side, yeah, there's a group of people that are crazy Baal worshipers, but all of Israel is surrounding the mountain. All of Israel is standing there looking at what's about to happen. And you guys know what happens, right? Yeah, the Baal worshipers, they get to go first. And it says that they start cutting themselves, they start screaming. And Elijah, this guy over here, is screaming at them the whole time, like he's taunting them the whole time. And this is hilarious if you don't think somebody doesn't have a sense of humor in the Bible. In chapter 18 or 19, verse 27, Elijah says this, "Where is Baal? Is he relieving himself?" Do you guys know what it means? Yeah, that's pretty funny. Like, where is your God? Is he using the restroom? Is he off to the side? Like, what's he doing? And these Baal people have to be just like going crazy over here. Some of them have probably passed out because of blood. I don't know. That's gross. All right, but this is all happening over here, and nothing happens. Nothing comes down. Absolutely nada, nothing. And then it's Elijah's turn. And Elijah has this altar set up with the bull, and there's these stones around it, but then he starts asking them to pour these big basins of water on it. And he says, pour 3 of those basins, so they pour it on it. And then he goes, all right, pour 3 more. So they go back, they get the basins, pour it on it. Then what happens? He tells them to do it again. He tells them to do it again. They get 3 more basins, walk over, pour it on it. At this point, the little altar probably looks like the mud pit. It's probably absolutely disgusting, nasty. This dead bull is sitting there over it. There's all this mud everywhere, water everywhere. And Elijah just asks God to sacrifice the bull, to light it on fire, to sacrifice it for the people. And God does it. It says fire comes down, the bull, the water, the mud, whatever you want, disappears. Hopefully that's not fire coming down right now. But here's the thing. That's incredible. And that's certainly a direction that this lesson could take, the idea that in the midst of a bunch of people around you doing the wrong thing, you're doing the right thing. And that's the direction I was originally going to take, but we all know that something else ends up happening to Elijah. You see, after this incredible, amazing thing happens, Elijah walks back to the palace, finds out that Jezebel wants to kill him. Elijah's God just sent fire from the heavens to consume this offering. And Jezebel says she wants to kill him. And what does he do? That means he runs away. He runs away. He gets scared. He gets frightened. And we hear this story about him going into a cave and all these weird things happen. There's an earthquake, there's fire, there's all these other things. And then he hears a gentle whisper. And that's where God is. And he finds out that God has always been with him, but God gives him an even bigger truth. Elijah complaining about how he's the only one in Israel, how he's scared, not knowing what to do. He looks at God and he says, I'm all alone. What can I do? Just kill me now. And God says, guess what, Elijah? There's 7,000 more people in Israel just like you. And I'm so happy that you guys have kept with me to this point in the story. Because it's not just a story, it's not just there for us to read. There's an application to this that can fit into our lives so perfectly that I think we miss so often. Elijah wasn't the only one. Elijah knew he was struggling with this, but God tells him that there were 7,000 others going through the same thing that he was. And you see, sometimes we feel alone in a situation. We feel alone with the temptation. We feel alone with the pain. And we defeat it. We know God's on our side. But the next day, the same situation or an even less temptation can come into our lives, and we flee from it. What we learn in this story is that God is always there. He's that whisper. He's always behind you, but he gives you a bigger truth. He gives them a truth when he says that there were 7,000 other people here. Go back to the story on the mountain. It wasn't just the prophets of Baal on that mountain. It was all of Israel. There were 7,000 believers on that mountain. There were 7,000 people watching what happened, watching these crazy Baal worshipers, watching this terrible display of idolatry going down. And apparently we can assume that nobody said a word. That they stayed by themselves. That they were just lost among the crowd. Going after, trying to beat their issue, beat this evilness that surround them by themselves, not knowing that all of these other people were dealing with the same types of issues. We're dealing with the same types of problems. And Ben asked me to talk about being bold when you don't think anybody else is. When nobody else is. As Christians, guys, if you feel alone in a situation, realize maybe somebody else isn't going through the same thing, but they can understand your pain. That's what Chi Beta, that's what the church, that's what these entities are for. Gathering together as Christians to let them know what you're struggling with, to let them know what pain you have in your life, to let them help you. It's not just to stand to the side. After God tells Elijah about these 7,000 other people, Elijah immediately, for the rest of his days, walks throughout the land of Israel and continues to do God's duty. Guys, Elijah is one of the boldest guys I've ever met. But I think, read about. I'll meet him one day, that's cool. But I think something that we can get from this story, if anything else, is that you can be bold in a situation by yourself, but if you remain by yourself, at some point you're going to break. You have to be bold as a group.